What's going on, guys? JHoyt back with you today. Welcome back to Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Of course, it is Monday, at least for me. You guys are unfortunately seeing it on Tuesday, but with a Monday after a CDL event, you know what time it is. Time to recap the most recent CDL event, which was Minnesota's weekend. And boy, was this an absolute crazy event, and pretty much the definition of an online event. But of course, we had to get through the matches. First matchup featured the Seattle Surge and Atlanta FaZe. Now, usually I'm pretty sure I predicted 3-0 or 3-1. This one ends up going game 5. I believe this one was a reverse sweep in favor of Atlanta. And I think this was also the event, or not the event, the matchup where production or something delayed something by like 45 minutes. So not exactly the best look at when you try to look at competitive integrity and, you know, all that stuff, especially when given, you know, a team that, you know, not necessarily shouldn't be in the lead, but has earned themselves a 2-0 lead, and then they go and have a huge break, and now they're get reverse swept pretty much instantly. I don't know, kind of questionable. I know, you know, obviously I'm not trying to say anything, you know, rigged this, but like, it's kind of weird if you ask me. But into our second matchup, we have the Roker versus the Empire, and this one pretty standard, 3-1 for Dallas. I don't think anything crazy happened in this one, but Dallas comes away with that game 4 victory, moving them on to the semifinals, or not semifinals, the qualifier match with Atlanta for a chance to get into the semifinals. But we got to catch up on the knockout matches, and that's going to put the Seattle Surge up against the Minnesota Roker. The Roker get double first rounded in this one out of their own homestand, and Seattle moves on to the second round versus the new look Seattle Surge. I know with the preview video, I didn't make it beforehand, so obviously they made a roster change. Well, I guess added someone into their roster since Karma ended up retiring before that event. So obviously new look Seattle going into this one, so it looks good off the start. This one, they get up to that Roker match, they get through the game 5. However, their run stops right there versus Dallas. Dallas gets the 3-0, moving them on to the semifinals along with the Atlanta FaZe. But we got to catch up on Group B. Winners round 1 for Group B, we had the Los Angeles Guerrillas and the Toronto Ultra. This one goes game 5. A lot of game 5s, a lot of late games in this one. But the Los Angeles Guerrillas come away with a game 5 victory over Toronto. And LA sort of looked decent this weekend. They didn't look like just like a pushover team, you know, an easy 3-0. Like, they actually looked somewhat decent. And, you know, again, it is online, so anything can happen online. But, you know, this one was a pretty good event for the Guerrillas as they move on. A big showing for the Guerrillas, though, moving them on to the qualifier match. Our second matchup featured the Chicago Huntsmen and the Florida Mutineers. Now, this one, you know, I didn't really think Florida didn't have a chance, but usually, you know, Chicago would come away with a pretty, I don't want to say easy victory, but a hard-fought, like 3-0, 3-1 in this one. But this time, Florida comes away with the Game 5 victory. So, we're cursed that Florida ends up either taking out Chicago or giving Chicago really hard matches. And I think, honestly, now, Florida is now 3-0 up in the series versus Chicago. Like, what the heck about that team makes Chicago not be able to beat them? I don't get it, especially with a new roster for Chicago that I don't know what happened, but Chicago ends up losing this one in the game 5, dropping them down to the knockout matches. We have Chicago and Toronto in that first matchup. Chicago swift 3-0. You know, I just nothing really to say about that one. One of like the 2 or 3 3-0s we've had the entire weekend. I think that's yeah, only one of the 2 3-0s we had all weekend. Moving Chicago on to the second round of the losers bracket. But we had to have a match first off to have a matchup with Chicago. That's going to be the Los Angeles Guerrillas versus the Florida Mutineers. Florida stays perfect so far in this one. They get the 3-1 over the Gorillas, moving Florida on to the semifinals. But we got to have one more team enter into those semifinals, which would be the Los Angeles Gorillas versus the Chicago Huntsmen. Now, obviously, don't think I really predicted that LA would have came with us. I think I predicted Toronto in this one. But Los Angeles Gorillas, what the heck did you guys do this weekend that made you show up and actually play decent? Like, what the heck? So, this one, Chicago goes game 5 once again, and this time they lose it to the worst team in the league. So at the point of that tournament, Chicago was the #1 team, the Gorillas were the worst team, and the Los Angeles Gorillas take out the Huntsmen from this event, bowing the Huntsmen out at 5th, 6th, which Chicago didn't look in perfect form this weekend, but they still looked pretty good. Like, in most matches, they looked pretty good. But for whatever reason, if Chicago doesn't close it out in the game 4, like, Search and Destroy is so weird in this game that any of these little kids that run around and just do the most random things on the map, that they could easily steal away around from Chicago or from any team for that matter. But Chicago bows out, moving LA on to the grand finals, where this event just keeps getting crazier and crazier. So our first semifinal match features Atlanta FaZe versus the Los Angeles Gorillas. And once again, the Atlanta FaZe get pushed to a game 5 versus Los Angeles Gorillas. What? How does that make sense? I don't get it. Like, what is with LA this weekend that they beat Toronto, they lose to Florida, but then they beat the Huntsmen? I don't get it. But alright. Atlanta, though, wins the game 5, moving them on to the grand finals versus the winner of Florida and Dallas, which is our next matchup. Now, Florida, again, new team, right? Newer roster. They have Awakening now instead of Mox. They changed around the roster. They brought in Pharaoh for Pristini earlier in the year. Pristini now in Chicago. But Florida makes it to the grand finals in this one in that game 5 fashion, setting up a rematch versus Atlanta from a previous event. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Florida and Atlanta in the finals. Now, obviously, Atlanta, no surprise, being in the finals. But Florida, they have been a good team pretty much all year, but I wouldn't really consider them one of those tier 1 teams, right? You have Chicago, Atlanta, and Dallas as those tier 1. Florida, I would definitely put in that second tier, but for whatever reason, they show up at the most strange times. And in this one, Florida ends up winning this event. Now, from making a roster change to winning an event, the very next event, you wouldn't really picture that as a thing, but it happened. So congratulations to the Florida Mutineers as they walk away with this one. I mean, there was a lot of things questioned about this weekend. Production still really questionable. Competitive integrity was a huge thing this weekend. Some accusations of cheating towards some certain players. So I don't really know. I'm probably going to go over that in a different video. But an overall crazy event. Another online event with some crazy results that, probably wouldn't happen if it was on LAN. But, like I said, congratulations to Florida. Looking at the bracket now. Not the bracket. Looking at the standings post Minnesota here. We're going to have still the three-way battle between Atlanta, Chicago, and Dallas of that top 3. Where you have Atlanta currently #1 with 200 CDL points. Chicago right behind them, 10 points behind to be exact, at 190. Then you have Dallas Empire at 170. And right behind them now, the new winners of the most recent homestand. You're going to have the Florida Mutineers with 150 points. The Minnesota Roker at 5th place with 120. 6th place at 80 points being the London Royal Ravens. On the bottom side, we're going to have Optic Gaming Los Angeles at 70 CDL points. Tied for 8th, we're going to have Paris Legion and New York Subliners at 60 points. The Seattle Surge and the Los Angeles Guerrillas tied at 50 points. And last place, the Toronto Ultra at 40 points. I think this is the first time I've seen the Los Angeles Guerrillas out of that 12th spot in a long time. But I guess post-event analysis, we got another event this weekend. So expect another preview. I think, where are we heading to? Is it Paris? I don't remember exactly, but we're definitely excited to see that. Obviously, we'll recap it and cover it and predict it and preview it when it comes time, right before this weekend. But until then, guys, I'm going to wrap this one up here. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, hit that like button down below if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button. And as always, guys, we'll see you next time.